Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast where we solve everybody's problems before we die, because this week we watched The End of Time.
Written by who else but Russell T. Davies.
Directed by Euros Lynn.
And aired on December 25th, 2009 and January 1st, 2010.
We're at the end of the 2010
decade,
I guess.
First Doctor Who of this century. Or,
this century?
This decade. This decade. Rose was the first of this century, I think.
Yeah.
Unless Curse of Fatal Death came out in 2000.
No, that was pre-2000, so...
That was this decade.
Yeah.
98 or something like that?
I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it was 25 years, 35 years. It would have been 98. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. So this story gives Russell T 10 writing credits in a row, which is unprecedented for this show, and I don't think is ever, even approached by anybody else again. So, then again, he did co-write 2 of those, I think it was, because he co-wrote Waters of Mars and Planet of the Dead.
Yeah. Co-wrote Waters of Mars with some guy I've never heard of, and Planet of the Dead with
Gareth Roberts. A good man, Gareth Roberts. So, this is our final Russell T written episode, actually, because he doesn't write anything for the Moffat era, so...
And he uses the last 15 minutes of the episode for the actual greatest hits of Russell T. I mean, we've approached the greatest hits of Russell T before. We've called things the greatest hits of Russell T. And we've been like, we thought that was the greatest hits of Russell T, but this is the real greatest hits. But no, this is the real greatest hits.
Yeah, but I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
Because literally everyone behind the scenes and in front of the camera is leaving the show at the end of the story, so...
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Just, I'm not okay with a few specific things in it, but we'll get there eventually. This story really made me realize how ready I am for, Russell T to stop writing, because there's, all of his writing, quirks and just weird things are in this, and not necessarily, in terms of what's in the story, but just in terms of, the actual dialogue itself.
Well, he did write 10 stories in a row, so that would get grating for any writer.
Yeah, but just the little things he puts in the dialogue, the blank and blank and blank.
When the Doctor's describing what the monster missed in the Time War?
I don't remember the specific instances of it, but he does it. He puts it in every story. Someone says some construction blank and blank and blank, using the and twice. It's kind of
Why not? And is a good word.
I guess, but yeah, I don't know. It's
and doesn't even feel like a word to me anymore. And. Well, anyway, the story begins with the Doctor it
begins on Christmas.
Actually, yeah, it begins with this voiceover from some mysterious...
It's Rassilon.
Some mysterious unknown figure with a really deep voice, talking about how Christmas Day 2009 was the day that the human race ceased to exist, and everybody had bad dreams, but then they all forgot them. I don't think this is ever actually brought up again, because the only reason this is introduced is because one person in the entire world doesn't forget the dreams, and guess who it is? Just guess.
It's everyone's favorite character, Wilf.
My favorite character, Wilf.
I love Wilf.
Wilf
is cool. You really hyped up, the bad things that were going to happen to Wilf, and I was, prepared for some actual, psychological torture or something like that.
He was psychologically tortured.
Yeah, but it wasn't as bad as what I envisioned.
What did you envision?
You probably don't want to know.
Oh, God.
So it begins with Wilf just sort of walking around. He goes into a church at some point. He keeps seeing this woman throughout the story.
Yeah, this woman we never find out who she actually is.
It's strongly hinted that it's Donna. Yeah, because when
I always thought it was strongly hinted that it was the Doctor's mother.
Well, maybe you know more than I do because you've watched ahead. But when Wilf
this is never brought up again.
When Wilf asks who it is, they do that thing that we actually mentioned last week, and I didn't look up the name of it, which is that the part of the shot goes out of focus, the foreground goes out of focus, and the background comes into focus, and you see Donna. And then they never really answer that question, but that's
she was always coded as the Doctor's mother to me.
Why is that?
Because she's on Gallifrey, and she always talks about the Doctor, and the Doctor seems to know her as well in some connection stronger than what he had with Donna. The doctor knows what person Wilf is talking about without Wilf actually describing who she is or where she saw her, which to me always implied that the doctor knows her through some other aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not like it's never really answered. I still think it's Donna, but yeah.
Donna was on Gallifrey during the Time War.
Yeah, I mean, you never know how these things are going to play out, right? So, who knows?
I find that hard to believe.
Really? I find it more of a stretch that it's the doctor's mother.
Why?
Because that's like not even in the story.
It is to me.
Yeah,
like when I watched
sure.
it, I was like, it's the doctor's mom. She like covers her eyes when she's looking at the doctor. It's the doctor's mom. Some people think that that she becomes a weeping angel. She's like the start of the weeping angel race because she like covers her eyes, and also Rassilon mentions the weeping angels of old when they're in the Time Lord chambers.
It's also like a shame thing, wherever the two dissenters are the ones who cover their eyes and whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As we'll get to later.
Anyway.
Wilf sees her in a church.
Right.
There's
says some things.
There's some, I don't write down exactly what it was, but there's some acknowledgement here that Christmas is like a mostly pagan holiday, which was good, I think, because I think people refuse to believe that like way too much. They're like, nah, it's totally Christian, when like almost everything related to Christmas is actually like more pagan than
I think it was when
Christian.
they were in the church. I don't remember the specific instance.
There's
like there's a little TARDIS in the stained glass of the church.
Yeah. There's this guy, like this hooded guy in the background. I guess it's supposed to be the master.
No, the master hasn't come back yet.
Well, you see this hooded guy like in the background of he's just sitting there in the church. Yeah.
I just assumed it was some guy because the master hasn't come back yet, because we know the master hasn't come back yet because the place hasn't blown up yet.
Yeah, that's true. So, but I mean, I don't know. It's just really weird. I thought this was going to be someone like special, and later on I was like, oh, maybe it's somehow the master, but like I guess
it's Russell
not.
T chilling in the background.
Well, there is a Russell T like cameo in this, I think.
If there is, I missed it.
I mean, I didn't like look it up, but I'm pretty sure one of the people, they really focus on this one guy wearing like this maroon almost sweater when everyone's panicking at the end when Gallifrey shows up, and I'm pretty sure it's Russell T. He looks kind of like Russell T. I didn't look it up, but could be him.
I didn't notice it if he was in this. Anyway, we should actually explain what happens. Wilf is just like, man, I hope the doctor comes back. And the lady in the church is like, they call that guy the sainted physician. He's supposed to come back at some point. And Wilf's like, man, I really hope it's just Christmas because I'm seeing these weird visions of this guy laughing. And then we cut to the doctor landing on the Ood sphere because he saw Ood Sigma at the end of Waters of Mars, and he indicates that he's been like running away from his death for like quite a while.
He comes out with sunglasses and like
a lei
adornments
and a hat. And he indicates that he's been running away from his death for a while. Apparently he married Queen Elizabeth I. He makes a reference to her nickname.
So that's what the thing was in the Shakespeare code.
Yeah.
Wow.
I guess so.
Yeah, I didn't even...
We see the 10th Doctor's wedding to the Queen. Was it Queen Elizabeth or Queen Victoria? Now I'm forgetting. It was Elizabeth.
It must be Elizabeth, because that's Elizabethan era.
We see the Doctor's marriage to Queen
Victoria
Elizabeth.
Started Torchwood.
Oh, yeah. Must have been... It was Elizabeth then. But yeah, we see the Doctor's marriage to Elizabeth at a later point. No spoilers. But the Doctor... Yeah, says he's been running away from it, and Ood Sigma's like, you shouldn't have been running away because now everything's way worse, and it's probably unlikely that you'll be able to stop anything. And the Doctor's like, And then the Ood are like, yeah, we built this in 100 years, and the Doctor's like, that's not possible. Something is causing you to like evolve way quicker than you should be. So he goes to like their city, and we meet the Ood Elder, who's basically like the other Ood, except you can see his like first brain on his head and his second brain. The one that's like in his hands is really creepy actually because his head looks like a brain. Yeah, so does that mean like the rest of the Ood have smooth brains? Their heads are their brains and they have like smooth brains like a koala or whatever? I don't know. I really don't know because I had always assumed the Ood brains are like inside their head, but then the Ood Elder is like throws a real wrench in this theory because you can just his head is his brain. Well, I mean, maybe that's why he's like the Elder because he has like a wrinkled brain, which are wrinkled brains are like more capable of allegedly thinking or whatever. But, allegedly, yeah. I think bird brains are smooth as well. So birds are capable of some pretty fantastic things. So allegedly, winkles are good, but hell if I know. I'm not a biologist or a neurologist for that matter. And they basically show him this vision they've been having, which is the same one Wilf has been having, which is the master laughing. And then they indicate that something is returning, and also they show the doctor that when he burnt the master's body, he missed the ring falling off the master's finger, which we all knew was going to be Russell T's way of bringing the master back.
No, well, we all knew he was going to come back somehow, regardless of what it was.
Yeah.
As he always does.
He could have just showed up in this episode without even explaining how he came back, and I would have just been fine with it, because that's just what the master does.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time,
what the master does later. No spoilers again.
That actually brings us to a good point about part one of this, which is that it's not the greatest episode.
No,
I mean, they're setting up a lot of things for part two. Mm-hmm. It just feels kind of barren, honestly.
This entire story, looking back on it, the plot is actually really simple.
Yeah, plot-wise, it's actually really straightforward.
And simple. There's a lot of embellishments to the plot, which make it seem really grandiose and over the top.
I mean, I think a lot of the embellishments you're talking about were needed in terms of character and thematic stuff. But if you're just looking at point A to point B to point C, etc., it's actually pretty simple.
Yeah. No, I agree. That is what I'm saying.
Which was okay. There's one point I'm going to mention in part two where I wish things would have been different, but we'll get there.
We should mention that this is these two parts combined is I think it's the longest single story of the reboot so far, because the first part is an hour long and the second one is an hour and 15.
Yeah, it's 2 hours, 15 minutes total.
It's basically a feature-length movie if you watch them back-to-back, like I did.
Oh, God. I didn't, thankfully. I mean, they could have released this as a movie, as a end point to the this era of the show, this 5 years of Doctor Who.
If they wanted to.
But I think
the plot would have been too barren for it to have really been interesting as a movie.
Sure.
I know, considering I watched it back to back and I wanted to claw my eyes out by the end, because I was like, oh my God, end, please.
Well, there's also the thing that Doctor Who, the main canon and what people really appreciate is the main sort of backbone of Doctor Who is the TV show.
Yeah.
So doing this as a movie would be okay, but
they could do what they do now, which is air it as a TV episode and then just have a special event in theaters where they air it as an edited together movie.
Yeah.
Because now typically when there's a Christmas special, they have a special event where they show the Christmas special in movie theaters in addition to airing it on television. So
reminds me of when I watched Children of the Stones a few months ago. I finished it a few months ago on recommendation from Ernest Malley on Twitter. But when I watched that, I watched it pretty spread out. I watched maybe one or two a week, and I wished I just watched that all 7 I think episodes in a row, because it really is just one long thing that's just spliced up.
That's interesting. I was trying to think if I had anything else to say on that matter, but I don't. So.
Yeah, no, I mean I didn't. It's not that related. I just brought it up because I thought about it.
So the Doctor then starts running to the TARDIS. He has this, quote, funny, unquote, gag where he locks the TARDIS like a car with the key, but then it wasn't really funny. It didn't land at all. Even the Doctor was like, yeah, it was a
well, the joke is supposed to be that it's not actually funny, and he's hyping it up. But even that joke in itself failed.
That meta joke is not funny. The Doctor runs to the TARDIS and he heads off to Earth, and while he's doing that, we're getting these cuts of this scene where these people break Lucy, Saxon's wife, out of prison, and they take her to this. Actually, they don't break her out of prison. This is the prison. They just take her to another room in the prison.
They basically bring her to this room where they're doing these satanic-looking experiments.
Which, as it turns out, is to revive the Master. Right. They need the Master's DNA, though, and the Doctor burned the body, which kind of leaves them SOL until they realize they apparently can get it off of Lucy's lips, even though she kissed the Master legitimately 3 years ago.
Maybe she's just never showered since then.
Oh, boy.
And I mean, I don't know, I didn't really feel anything for Lucy in this. Not that you had to, but even her quote-unquote redemption moment where she shoots the Master is that is supposed to lead you into maybe feeling something for her, and this didn't really land for me either. But hey,
she shot the Master in...
She shot the Master literal years ago too.
And then in this one, she, again, quote, kills, unquote, the master, because they basically have this resurrection ritual where they give their life force as well as all these weird potions, which is apparently written down in the Book of Saxon. Apparently, the master accounted for the fact that he was going to die and started a cult based around the fact that he's an alien and told them how to resurrect him in the case that he dies.
Master, but this is also has to do with like some of the thematic stuff, especially at the end, with like people giving up their own lives to, one, save the lives of other people, and just like the fact that like life is like connected, right? Like people, and that's like a real thing as well. Like things dying is what lets other things live, both in the sense that like, one, people and just things in general typically eat other things or consume other life, and just like, you know, when you die,
yeah,
you know, you're gonna get eaten by the food chain, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is like interesting here. It's the master being revived by. He has to like initiate this, right? It's not something natural that he comes back. In this instance, it's like he has to, like you mentioned, start this cult that brings him back.
Yeah. And then
So
this
the
cult has
master's
to read this book and create these potions to bring him back.
Right. The master's like actually really disconnected from the circle of life here. If he has to like jump through these hoops to bring himself back. Which is interesting.
I mean, even still, what's interesting about this is that the master later says that this body was born out of death, because Lucy then, she is like, yeah, I counted for this too, and I had some people create the opposite of your potions. It'll just kill you. Yeah. The master's like, no, and she chucks it in, and there's like this huge explosion. The master survives, but he later says that his body was born of death, so all his body can do is die.
Right. So he's pretty disconnected from like actually giving rise to more life out of his death. There's also, and when he comes back, he's starving. He can't get enough to eat, you know?
Yeah, because he's constantly dying. His life force is like being drained away constantly, basically. It gets better later on when he steps into the immortality gate, which mostly heals him, but then that's the moment when the master explains that the body was born of death, so even with the immortality gate healing him, all the body can do is die. Thanks to Lucy. Good job, Lucy.
His hair is like white or blonde or like whitish.
It's a lot more like white than it was in Lost of the Time Lord, sorry. In my opinion, anyway.
It wasn't really white, and I mean, he had brown hair before.
It was browny blonde. It was like dusty blonde.
Yeah.
And in this one, it's like
bright
white blonde.
Yeah, it's basically white.
So he's
just wandering
having
around.
a grand old time.
He kills some homeless guys.
Yeah.
Shoves an entire burger into his face in 2 seconds.
Oh, yeah, one guy's like, haha, you look like Mr. Saxon. He's like, haha, isn't that funny? Master of disguise, and, you know, is trapped in this politician's body. Then he says something about, like, trying to get the smell off. Meanwhile, we meet Joshua Naismith and his daughter, Abigail, because they watch the footage of the prison blowing up, and there's this like figure that moves quickly across the camera, and they believe it's the master because apparently they somehow found out about the cult of Saxon, so they think that alien Saxon can help them with this device that they've, I guess, salvaged from like it like crash landed on Earth. I think they've
got hold of it somehow. Later. And what they plan on doing with that, as we find out in a little bit, is Naismith wants to give his daughter eternal life, basically.
Yeah, because the gate basically heals whoever steps into it, so he believes, or they believe, the scientists believe, that if they fix the gate, then it'll give them immortality. They don't know that.
There's a mechanism also where it's 2 people in like this closed room, one person, but like one of the sides is locked at all times and the other side's open at all times. The person inside is locked in until somebody goes on the other side and opens the door and lets them out, and then they're locked in.
Yeah, because
as soon as this happens, you know somebody's going to like get stuck in there, probably Wilf, and it's going to be the doctor having to save them. I saw this coming from a mile away.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. The explanation for this is like kind of really sketchy, and this really only exists to like trap Wilf later. But the explanation is like, we got to monitor the nuclear reactor at all times, so we have one person in there at all times.
Yeah, that's fine. Like.
Yeah, no, I didn't really have a problem with it. I'm just saying the explanation was like kind of sketchy because once again, this 2-person door system only exists to trap Wilf later on, which is fine. You have to have that devastating moment where the doctor thinks he's survived and then he hears
freaking Wilf.
Wilf knew that the doctor's prophecy was to knock 4 times. Wilf. Anyway, the doctor actually
Doctor
meets
just
Wilf.
turns around
now.
at 3 and he's like, not today. Shoots Wilf. Pretty sure the glass is like bulletproof though, so.
Yeah. The doctor says doing anything will set it up. Okay, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
The doctor actually meets up with Wilf because Wilf's looking for the doctor. So he has his group of senior citizens of London, I guess.
He tells Sylvia that he's going to go off Christmas shopping or something like that. And then he gets on this bus of just old men and women looking for the doctor. He doesn't really tell them all that much either. He's like, all right, we're going to look for this guy. And they're like, why? And who is this person? He's like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. And then they find him, the doctor, at this junkyard. The doctor chases the master at the junkyard. And then the master gets away somehow. And then the Wilf walks up and is like, hey, doctor. And the doctor's like, how the hell did you find me? And he's like, look, I got all these senior citizens. And the doctor's like, you told me you wouldn't tell anyone who I am. And he's like, I didn't. I just said you were a doctor. And they're like, let's take a picture. And then Minnie is trying really hard to
Was Minnie the one who like
grabs the doctor's butt. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say attends Donna's wedding with
That is also
Wilf.
Minnie.
Yeah.
Same person. The doctor's like, well, thanks, Wilf. So they go to this cafe, and the doctor is trying to find out why Wilf took him to this specific cafe. And then Wilf kind of just points out the window, and Donna's right there packing her car, and the doctor's like, no.
Wilf wonders whether the doctor, really can't tell Donna anything, and the doctor again reinforces that he can't because it'll. Well, he says that it'll cause really bad things to happen.
It'll kill Donna. He reiterates that multiple times. And then
Wilf also drops. He drops this here. He drops it at multiple points, and people talk about it. That he was a soldier, but he didn't kill anyone when he was in Palestine. I guess it
World War II. I mean, it was during World War II.
Yeah, what's now Palestine, I guess.
So Wilf mentions.
That's another reason why, I think it's Donna. Like the woman is Donna, right? She knows a considerable amount about Wilf.
She knows more about the doctor, though. She knows things about the doctor that Donna didn't know, like how the doctor has never taken up arms.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like a future Donna too. So
I don't think so.
I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe they'll bring that. Maybe they'll touch on this character again at some point. Somehow I doubt it, but hey.
I still really think it's the doctor's mother, honestly.
I'm going to hold out thinking it's Donna.
Okay, I mean, spoiler alert, they never touch on this again, so...
But the show's not over yet.
I guess. I guess.
Like Ood Sigma at the end said, I don't know if it was Ood Sigma, just Ann Ood says at the end, story isn't, or what does he say? The story never ends.
He says your song is ending, but the story never ends.
Yeah. Which is actually really thematically related to what goes on at the end of this, but also, Doctor Who never really ends.
Doctor Who also never really touches on anything that it brings up beforehand when you really look at it.
This
reboot has been the first time that it's really done that.
Yeah, that's true. This one also really reaches back into the literal first 5 seconds of Doctor Who in existence by bringing back the 4 beats as the Time Lord heartbeat and a big point in this story.
Yeah. It also reaches back to the first
was really cool
5 seconds of the reboot right at the end of this, the final scene.
Right.
So
that too, but I'm just talking about how literally the first thing you ever see on Doctor Who is the intro sequence, and the first thing you hear is this dun-na-na-na. I just thought it was really cool that they actually brought that back and did something with it, kind of in the.
I mean, they mentioned that it was the Time Lord heartbeat in Lost of the Time Lords, so I mean, this isn't the first time that they brought that back.
Yeah, I mean, I actually forgot about that, but still really cool, kind of in Solo when they bring back the Kessel Run or whatever. And they explain how, I spoiled the movie. They explain how...
You spoiled the movie for yourself?
Yeah.
You should have just gone and watched it, honestly.
But I don't care. I really don't care about spoilers for anything anymore, really. But, yeah,
I guess.
I mean, I thought it was cool how they did that in Solo.
They also brought back that other thing.
What other thing?
Oh, I guess you didn't spoil the entire movie for yourself.
Yeah, I guess I didn't. But, if you want to spoil it right now, I wouldn't care.
I mean, I'm going to spoil it, but then I'm just going to beep it out later, but...
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's awesome.
So, anyway, the doctor basically Donna's getting married to some other guy, and the doctor says, "Oh well, she's got someone now."
Yeah,
and she
really
doesn't
moved
need
on
me.
quickly from what's his... No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
It's been like 2 years.
Also, he was a backstabbing alien. He wasn't an alien. He was just...
Backstabbing a-hole.
Yeah.
Well, then Wilf asks the doctor why he's so sad, and then the doctor's like, "I've gone too far. Like, I did some things, and I tried to save some people, and I went too far." And Wilf's like, "You need someone. Go to her. Like, won't she make you laugh again?" And the doctor just kind of nods solemnly, and Wilf's like, "Okay." And the doctor heads out because he's got to go find the master. And he does, really easily, because apparently they can smell each other. Apparently Time Lords have a keen sense of smell for each other.
Well, there's also always been this thing where, like, the master and the doctor are like somehow drawn together by something or the other.
Yeah.
Whether that's the master, like, hunting down the doctor or something else, you know.
And they meet up, and the master, like, grabs the doctor's head and shows him the drum beat. And the doctor hears it, and he's like, "Wow. Never really believed you, honestly, but now I do."
Because you never really brought it up for those hundreds of years that we've known each other.
Because you didn't bring it up until you were in this incarnation, so... And that's why some people have, like, a big problem with the drum beat, because they feel like it diminishes the master's character, because it, like, explains away his evil plans as just, like, insanity from this drum beat, and instead of, like, him being, like, an actual, like, evil or malicious person.
But they also, at one point, I don't remember what story this was in. It must have been whatever the last one with the master was called.
Last of the Time Lords.
Yeah, Last of the Time Lords. They say, like, oh, it wasn't actually the drum beat that drove you crazy. You're just like a madman, and it was just looking into the vortex also that sort of drove you crazy.
Except looking into the vortex is what put the drum beat in his head.
Well, not really. I mean, that's not the whole story.
Well,
because we find
the Time Lords put the drum beat in his head, but they put it in his head by sending it through the time vortex.
Yeah.
So when he looked in the time vortex is when it got in his head. I mean, I always just... If you really, like, dislike that, I always just like, well...
I don't
I
dislike
I just assume the Time Lords just only put the drum beat into this incarnation of the Master's head, because this is the one that escapes the Time Lords, so... And that's why he never brings it up again.
I mean, they put it in his head
before.
as like a small child.
Yeah, but I was just like, well, maybe it just, like, didn't activate, like the water virus that can
maybe.
just stay dormant forever.
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, I don't have a problem with it. I actually like it.
I don't have a problem with it either, but for a while I was always like, well, just like headcanon it away as like it was just that specific incarnation. It's really easy to explain it that way too, because there's like nothing that explicitly contradicts that except the fact they put it in him when he was a kid. So
sure,
but time is weird.
Well,
so.
Throughout all of this, we've been getting sort of...
Shout out to this kid actor who plays the Master, who has no lines and just has to stand there and look terrified and fails at doing even that.
Well, this also isn't like new footage. This is reused from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but still, shout out to that actor who just needs to look terrified and then doesn't even do that.
I guess that's true. We get, this shot again of him looking into the time vortex. I don't think there's anything like new in this. I'm pretty sure it's the exact same thing we saw a couple of years ago. A couple of months ago for us.
Yeah, but I don't think we're actually there yet. Because the Master then gets captured by the Naismiths, and the Doctor just kind of gets knocked out, and they just kind of leave him there.
Yeah.
Because he meets up with Wilf again. Because then it's Christmas, so Wilf gets a present from Donna, and she hands him this book by Joshua Naismith called Fighting the Future. And he's like, why did you give this to me? I don't want to read this.
I'm sure that's not connected to anything that's going to happen in the story at all.
Well, because then Donna has this sudden like flash moment where she's like, I don't know, just like spoke to me in the store, just felt like you needed to have this book. She says like, it just felt like it was something you'd like.
Yeah.
And Wilf's like, that's really weird. And then the TV flips over and it's the strange lady, and she's like, Wilf, you're not allowed to tell the Doctor any of this, but you need to take up arms. Because the Doctor's not going to take up arms, so the Doctor's life can still be saved, but you need to take up arms.
Yeah. There's this thing in this story with Wilf being like insecure that he never actually shot anyone, or...
Yeah, because everybody tells him that he should have killed someone in the war, and then the Doctor later on says that Wilf should be proud for not killing anyone.
Yeah, or he tells him that he would be proud if Wilf was his dad, because the Master at one point is like, oh, your dad over here is being a real pain in the neck. Something like that.
So, then what happens?
I think the Doctor and Wilf sort of go to... I don't know where this was, actually.
Just it's a Naismith's, like, mansion.
Yeah, it's just a house.
But so, this was actually like, one of my favorite scenes in this, because Wilf, like, chases after the Doctor, And then Sylvia's like chasing after them. The doctor gets to the TARDIS. He's like, "You're not coming with me." And Sylvia's like, "Come back, Wilf. You come back right now." And Wilf just turns to the doctor. He's like, "You're not leaving me here with her." And the doctor's like, "Good point. Get in." And
Yeah,
they get in.
they're really mean to Sylvia in this, especially at the end where they're like, she's smiling. Gross.
I don't know, but I felt like it was like a playful banter between the doctor. I felt like it was like a.
It was funny.
I thought it was like
wrong.
the kind of like playful jabbing between like good friends, right?
I don't know if Sylvia and the doctor are actual good friends, honestly.
No, but it felt like to me just like playful, like, haha, you suck.
Sure. I mean, the later instance where they're like, she's smiling is actually a little bit more questionable.
So they leave, and Sylvia's just yelling at them, and then Donna comes outside. It's like, you're just yelling at.
Everybody hates Sylvia.
Sylvia's in one of the audios.
I'm not surprised about that.
Donna comes out and is just like, "Sylvia, Mom, are you just yelling at? Are you just yelling at nothing?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's what I'm doing." Donna's like, "What's
It's a Christmas tradition, Donna." No.
A new tradition was starting.
So they go to the Naismiths' mansion, I guess, or just house or whatever.
The doctor cunningly hides the TARDIS by like
In the
putting
basement.
He puts it 1 second out of sync with real time, which is why the Master can't find it later on.
Yep.
And him and Wilf basically run through. We also get the scene where two of the scientists
Are aliens.
reveal themselves to be aliens that look like Panacaphilata from Voyage of the Damned.
Except they're green.
Except they're green. And I think the doctor actually mentions this later. He's like, "I knew one of you, but he was red." And I don't remember their response to that.
They're like, we're closely related with, they're like, don't confuse us with whatever the race was. We're actually whatever we are. I forgot the names.
They're like the Vinacci, I think, or the Vin something. Vinvaci is a V there.
Yeah, you get the impression that they're always confused for whatever Panacaphilata was. And they're just sick and tired of it at this point. I thought this was actually funny where they're like, "We gotta go check the thing," and they go off and they take off their disguises. I'm like, what? There's these aliens here as well? So the machine that the Naismiths recovered is theirs, and they're sort of the recovery team.
Well, no, it's not theirs. Actually, they're a salvage crew that saw the machine crashing, and their plan is to wait for the Naismiths to fix it, and then they're going to steal it and then sell it because they can sell it for more when it's fixed.
But wasn't it like not theirs as in like their own, but like their species originally?
No, they said that they're just salvaging it. They're just like freelance salvage people. So
I don't know.
So they're just there because they saw it crashing because they were mining the asteroid field for scraps to sell, and they saw this machine crash on Earth.
Yeah, come to think, they don't really like get away with it either. They're left in the dust more than really anyone else in this story.
Yeah, well, they explain that the machine, because the doctor arrives and he turns off the disguises, because she's like, "I don't know what a shimmer is," and the doctor's like, "Shimmer," and he just turns it off, and she's like, "Ah, damn." And they explain to the doctor that the machine basically, it heals you, but it actually, the reason why it's so big is because it heals the entire planet. So you put in a genetic code and it basically heals everyone on the planet. Kind of reminds me of the nanites from The Empty Child the Doctor Dances that take your genetic code and then they
heal
a little
bit, actually.
So the Master does the
Master's thing to do.
Yeah, where he just escapes. We forgot to mention that the Master can shoot lightning bolts from his hands now. I guess because that was a plus from being revived, is that he can just use his life force to shoot lightning bolts out of his hands. So
yeah, it was pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. He also tears apart like an entire chicken.
Oh yeah, it was kind of disgusting.
Yeah, but a good addition to the story.
He steps into the gate.
I mean, I said that as a joke, but like I actually do think, and I mean, I don't know where I would go with this because I haven't thought about it too much, but like this is actually really thematically related to like what happens at the end and like what's going on in this story. Is the Master is like extremely hungry and he eats like this meat and just tears it apart and he's still starving.
Mm-hmm. He steps into the gate. The Doctor runs in to try to stop him, but it's too late. Everybody on Earth gets turned into the Master, except for Wilf, who steps into the
Smiths everyone.
Wilf, who steps into the radiation lock room, which apparently shields you from the Master's from the immortality gate, and also Donna, who isn't fully human.
Yeah, she's not
so
affected
she doesn't get
because
affected.
yeah.
But she does start to remember.
She starts to remember when she sees the master's face for whatever reason.
Yeah, which is weird because she never met the master. That was Martha.
Yeah.
Season-wise, that was the Doctor with Martha is what I'm
Although
saying.
maybe it's because the Doctor is partially inside of Donna or whatever, so.
Partially. Or maybe she picked up some of the Doctor's memories when the meta crisis happened. So she picked up the...
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. And that's how episode 1 ends, actually. Everybody gets turned to the Master, and the Master makes this amazing pun where he's like, the human race is no more. There's only the Master race. Actually, and then, and then it ends with...
the Time Lords with Rassilon.
Yeah, we find out the narrator who's been narrating this whole story is Rassilon. Apparently telling the story like to the council, I guess.
I mean, you don't find out that it's Rassilon. You find out that it's a Time Lord.
I guess, but he's like telling the story to like the council, I guess, and he's like, yeah, guys, turns out that they stopped existing on Christmas 2009.
Well, I don't know if he's telling it to the council.
He's telling it to someone.
It's narration. Maybe he's just telling it to us. But
there's 4 people with him, so it's implied that he's like telling it to them. At least that's what I assume.
He doesn't actually like turn around and speak. It's just like voiceover narration. We've seen his head throughout this. You don't necessarily know it's a Time Lord unless you pick up on it with like the floral collar thing. Because you see his sort of collar, and then it sort of just pans down. You see his Time Lord robes. You see his Time Lord scepter or whatever.
The biggest plot twist here is that this is James Bond. This is Timothy Dalton playing Rassilon. Timothy Dalton played James Bond in 2 movies.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on it because I never watched any James Bond movies. The thing here that's weird about the Time Lords, and this is moving into episode 2 because episode 2 starts with the Time Lords, is that Gallifrey looks really, the interior stuff on Gallifrey looks really different. One, they have a Galactic Senate type thing. And 2, like, if I remember correctly, like in the classic show, whenever they went to Gallifrey, things were very bright, sort of had a white motif going on. Here, everything's like very dark, claustrophobic.
They have been fighting a war.
That's true.
And I was thinking about this because when we see the city because we start actually from the outside of the city and we pan in, and you can see like the city's like surrounded by this big dome.
Yeah, they reinterpret the domes. The domes were always there, but now they're more like snow globe orb things.
And the entire city's surrounded by a big one, which is like cracked and shattered. And there's like crashed spaceships all around in the wasteland that surrounds the capital city, which they still kept.
Apparently, I mean, you see all of Gallifrey later, like you see the planet from space, and like apparently all of it is just this wasteland, as far as I could tell.
Yeah. Well, they say later that they've lived for like 1 billion years, the species. Yeah. So it's likely they've exhausted all natural resources on their own planet.
Or maybe they're just like, man, we've been alive for like 100 years. Like, when people say like 100, like, man, that took like 100 hours or whatever. They're just saying like a lot. Like, that's what they mean. When people say like multiples of 10 or, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm just speculating, but like, man, we've been around for 1 billion years. Except
Rassilon says it more like 1 billion years of Time Lord history will not die today.
Yeah.
Because there's basically every prophecy that they have a soothsayer of some sort, apparently. Every prophecy she comes up with ends in Gallifrey this is the final day of the Time War. It ends with Gallifrey just being destroyed that day by the Doctor. Because they mention that the Doctor still possesses, quote, the moment, unquote. And I didn't actually realize, because in Day of the Doctor, we see the final day of the Time War from the Doctor's perspective. And he has the moment in that. And I never actually realized that Stephen Moffat took that name directly from this story. I never realized that.
Well, there's a lot of callbacks.
It's a nice bit of continuity, actually.
There's a lot of callbacks in this in terms of like the dialogue to other Russell T. written stories, like the guy who never would, the man who never would, I guess. And there's a few other ones that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, and when they're at the council table, they're talking about where the Doctor actually is during the Time War, which I think is interesting because they're like, oh, the Doctor still possesses the moment, and he's going to use it to wipe out both Time Lord and Dalek alike.
Yeah.
Which we see, like I said, in Day of the Doctor.
Well, we'll get there.
We will. Basically in 6 months, really, actually.
All right. I mean, I don't know the timeline on it, but...
About 6 months.
So I think at this point they realize, like, that all these things sort of lead to Earth.
Right, because there's one prophecy that doesn't quite end in Gallifrey's destruction.
There's, like, 2 people left behind, and it's obviously the Doctor and the Master. They're on Earth. And they have this. They pull up really quickly this hologram of Earth.
Yeah, which I guess
on
they
the
keep
ready.
saved.
Yeah, I mean, they're the Time Lords, right? Later on in this story, I'm just mentioning it now. The Doctor is like, I choose to remember the Time Lords being wonderful, because Wilf was like, didn't you mention that your people are like really great? And he's like, that's how I choose to remember them as being wonderful. And I was like, I don't remember the Time Lords ever really being wonderful. In fact,
Yeah.
it was always like, since they were first established, they were basically,
Tyrants.
yeah. Even before they were called the Time Lords, back in the War Games.
I mean, Barusa was all right.
Yeah, well,
Until the Five Doctors.
Until he decided to go
Pursue
all Rassilon
immortality.
on everyone. Rassilon being in this is also a little weird.
Is it?
Yeah,
Because Rassilon was dead in the classic series.
yeah, that's why it's a little weird.
It's not, in my opinion, actually, I think it just shows how brutal the Time War was, because there's another line in the Council where she says that they keep resurrecting other Time Lords to fight in the war for them, and they just keep finding new ways to die, and that maybe it's time for the war to end, and Rassilon zaps her and kills her
Yeah.
for this opinion, but
Rassilon has this glove that can zap people. I was
this
wondering,
infinity gauntlet.
did we see that? Was this one of like the Rassilon's like items in the classic show?
The glove of Rassilon. I don't remember. There was the hand of Rassilon, remember? I remember that.
I don't remember that, actually.
Which might be this glove, actually, now that I think about it. But what I was saying is that I think there's this implication that like they resurrected Rassilon to help them win the Time War, because they were just so desperate for advice and leadership during the Time War that they resurrected this great figure in Time Lord society.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because, yeah, I think this is actually the first time we see Rassilon on screen alive.
Yeah,
You
it
see
is.
Rassilon's
Yeah, it is.
tomb in the Five Doctors.
And that's actually really interesting. Like, if we go along with this idea that they resurrected him, you always think like, oh man, if this person from the past was here today, they would know what to do or whatever. And like, yet if that's what they do here, they bring him back and he just like makes everything worse, or like he's not able to like actually know what to do. Like in this time, times have changed, things are different. And it's just, he had to die, just like the Doctor. He can't keep coming back and back and back again and again.
I think in the audio dramas, because they have a lot of audios that expand on the Time
sure.
War, they have audios that indicate they resurrect Rassilon, and they even like resurrect Barusa.
Oh God, why would they do that?
To fight in the time, because they're desperate for soldiers, right? And that's the thing.
Just get all those council members to fight.
The
Look like
Time
there
Lords
were
can do
thousands of them
like
there.
they can just resurrect previous Time Lords and give them like a new regeneration.
They can just do whatever they
cycle.
want, whenever
Basically,
they want.
yeah. Which is why the Doctor says, like, over the course of the reboot, the Doctor said, like, the Time Lords had to die because they just became too, like, powerful and hedonistic.
Yeah, and
basically.
he says at one point when he's talking to Wilf later, he's like, sometimes I think Time Lords live too long. And at that moment, he's both talking about, like, an actual single Time Lord's lifespan and just, like, this billion years of Time Lord history of them just being controlling people.
History, I guess. So then Rassilon chucks this diamond from his scepter to Earth because they need like a physical link to bring Time Lords and Gallifrey back.
Yeah, that's a little bit later. We can explain all this now because it sort of happens out of time with the rest of it. It's also a little bit difficult to keep track of what's going on where. But this was actually one of the problems I had that I wanted to bring up a little bit later is that he chucks the diamond into the hall. I guess he's able to send it to Earth or whatever. It falls to Earth, and then after that we see like the Master going to pick it up and the Master realizing that like the drumbeat is emanating from that diamond and whatever.
Well, it's emanating from Gallifrey.
Yeah, but like channeling through the diamond, right? When the diamond is like falling from the sky, he's like, oh, there it is. It's coming from up in the sky. And I don't know. I felt like this like moment would have been better if it was before we saw like what Rassilon does, because like it destroys any mystery of what this thing really is. Like we know what's happening at all times. I
guess,
have somewhat
but
of
they
a
don't-
problem with that.
They don't try to have any mystery surrounding what this is, because
Exactly.
the instant the Master picks it up, he's like, this diamond can only exist on Gallifrey. It's a type of diamond that can only exist on Gallifrey, and that's how he realizes that the Time Lords are the ones who put the message in his head.
Exactly. That's why like switched around. This could have been more interesting.
I guess, but I don't think there's any way you could have had any mystery, because no matter who picks up this diamond, the instant the Master turns everybody into the Master knows what the diamond is.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know how you would build any mystery around this.
But
Because
why
like
not though? Like,
the instant that the master sees the diamond, he has to reveal what it is because he knows what it is.
I mean, he doesn't have to reveal what it is. And plus, like, just saying like it's from Gallifrey doesn't mean you know that Rassilon is the one who sent it. I mean, you can have a hint, but like, yeah, I don't know. I just felt it would have been worked a little better, like switched
I don't
around.
think it would have worked at all, in my
I
opinion.
do.
Because I mean, I
You
think,
could put two and two together, but like that
but you
doesn't.
wouldn't. But the thing is that you don't, like, if you've never watched the classic series, you don't know that those are the Time Lords. You don't know that until the Master mentions that they're the Time Lords that sent the diamond, right?
Sure,
the only reason
that's
why
fine.
we're recognizing that they're the Time Lords is because of the robe. So in some way, there is already mystery if you haven't watched the classic
Yeah,
show.
maybe. I guess I don't know.
Because if you don't know who the Time Lords are, right, you don't know what they look like. I mean, if you remember the one time we've seen Gallifrey in the show before this, then you recognize Gallifrey from that opening shot. But otherwise, you're going to be like, who are these people? What do they want?
A couple times we've seen.
I guess at the end of episode 1, I think there's this big reveal because Rassilon says this is the day the Time Lords return. But
I don't know. I still stand by like my thinking that it would be more effective if like it wasn't as straightforward as it is.
I mean, maybe. I don't think it would have worked, honestly, in my opinion.
Well, it's not what we got, so either way,
The Doctor and Wilf
they're captured
are
basically.
captured. The Doctor's interrogated for a bit, but then they get freed by one of the cactus people, the Vinvachi.
Right. Who's dressed up as one of the masters or one of the guards who would have turned into the master if he were human.
And who was going to kill Wilf, but then the Doctor's like, you haven't realized that guard's an inch too tall, and the Master's like, wait, what?
Yep, this is when the master calls Wilf the Doctor's dad.
Oh yeah, Donna
Wilf,
calls
Donna's alive and well. She calls Wilf, and that the master sort of homes into where she is, but she just runs away at this point.
Yeah, but she starts to remember, and then there's this big explosion, and the
Yeah.
Doctor just kind of casually mentions, like,
she
you think I
remembers-
wouldn't put a safeguard in her head?
She remembers the vest before him, and she's like, "Oh God, what's that giant wasp?"
And Wilf thinks she's dead, and then the Doctor's like, you think I wouldn't put, like, a safety guard in my former companion's head?
You think I wouldn't mess with people even more than I already have? Who do you think I am?
Would have been nice to mention the safeguard at some point beforehand, Doctor,
he
but...
didn't really need to, right? Like the hope would be that like nothing bad would happen to Donna for this to be needed to be activated.
The hope. What if Wilf was just talking to Donna about, like, something random and she remembers and this explosion just, like, kills Wilf or something?
You haven't been to the doctor in a while, Donna. I'm just like, oh God, my head.
Wolf just dies.
So they start. The one guy is trying to unstrap the doctor, and the other lady's like, "It's gonna take too long. Just wheel him out." Doctor's like, "No, don't do that. Unstrap me."
And they wheel him all the way down to the basement, and then they teleport up to the spaceship, and then the Doctor just blows up the teleport so the Master can't follow them. And then they're about to leave in the spaceship, and the Doctor just blows up the control panel with a sonic screwdriver. He's like, nope, we're not going anywhere. And apparently, if you just turn off the spaceship, you can't detect it from Earth.
The ship looks really cool. I really liked it. You know, they really.
It looks like a sea snail, in my opinion.
All right.
Just what it looks like.
Okay. I mean, they went all out with some of the CG and the design stuff in this. It looked really good, really paid off, in my opinion.
I mean, it was the big ending story, right? So, in my opinion, they're going to go out on this bang.
Right. And I mean, I remember from the classic show, you know, watching the Tom Baker era, a lot of people just stopped watching Doctor Who after Tom Baker left. Mm-hmm. I wonder how much that was the case here too, because like this, if you wanted to just stop watching Doctor Who, like this is a good place to do it.
It would be, but surprisingly, viewership actually increases under the 11th Doctor's run. It's interesting because Stephen Moffat, Russell T brings Doctor Who back in England, and David Tennant, you know, became
Worldwide,
really popular, but Doctor Who doesn't really become popular in America till the Stephen Moffat era is in full swing.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. Especially since
Popular in America again, I should say, because it would air on PBS back in the classic show.
but even like back then, it wasn't huge in
Right.
America. But like,
it becomes a much bigger thing in America during the Stephen Moffat era.
that's also really interesting because, you know, people, I think now looking back on both of these sort of eras, the 10th Doctor's era and the 11th Doctor's, I think people are more fond of the 10th Doctor, and he just seems to be the one whose popularity has held out the most.
From what I've seen,
mostly probably because of David Tennant himself.
Probably, but from what I've seen, it's tended to be actually pretty equal between 11 and 10, with 9 trailing in distant third.
Well, 9 also has less screen time, which is like it or not, that's why a lot of people, including myself, really like Tom Baker's, because he was just there for so long.
Yeah, 7 years. And Colin Baker was hoping to go for 7 years, which would have put him right up there with Tom, I think. If they actually
we all know how that panned out.
If they actually completed that character arc, I think he would have easily been right up there.
If they actually had not completely screwed up and just screwed Colin Baker over, honestly.
Colin really fell on his sword for the show there. So then we get the Doctor and Wilf in the spaceship, and then the Master basically sends out this transmission that says the diamond is a white point star, and the Doctor basically says, "Oh, those can only be found in Gallifrey."
Gallifrey's coming here. There's a couple of moments on the ship, right? Wilf encounters the woman, who again they talk about Wilf's time in World War II, how he never fired or whatever. She mentions the gun because Wilf has a gun on him.
She mentions that. I have completely blanked on what I was going to say. I just completely left my mind. Wow, that was really weird. It'll come back to me.
And then Wilf has this moment with the Doctor where he tells the Doctor that he better not
die. Because the Doctor tells him about the prophecy, and Wilf thinks that it's the Master who's going to kill the Doctor because the Master's time beat is the 4 drum beats. So Wilf...
Yeah, just wanted to mention also that the Prophet on Gallifrey was doing that really poorly. She was like way off beat or whatever. They talk about that, but Wilf also tells the Doctor that he better not. When the Doctor is like, "No, I can't kill him," or when Wilf tries to offer him the gun and he declines multiple times, Wilf is like, "Oh, Doctor, you better not put the Master above everyone on Earth."
Well, then the Doctor counters with, "You had the gun in the mansion and you had the Master right there in the gate. Why didn't you just shoot him?" And Wilf's like, I froze," and the Doctor's like, "Yeah. That's okay."
The Doctor tells him that he's proud. He would have been proud if Wilf was his actual father.
Yeah.
Which is good for
Wilf. Gets really put through the emotional ringer in this episode because he finds the Doctor. He's like, "Yeah, Doctor's going to save the day." And then the Doctor basically tells him he's lived for like 900 years and he's going to die. And then to top it all off, Wilf has to be the agent of the Doctor's destruction. Like...
Yeah,
Wilf's going to be scarred for life after this.
I'm actually surprised how well Wilf's character works in this because, I mean, it's not like Wilf is a new character, but a lot of the stuff here in terms of Wilf's like internal dilemma about his qualms about how he like wasn't like, about how he never fired a gun or whatever. He never like actually participated in World War II and to the extent that he would have wanted to.
Right.
That's like mostly brought up here.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised how well it works, just in this single story.
We
knew he was a vet.
That he fought, because of Turn Left, where they send off the family that was living in their house, and Wilf's like, "It's happening again. It's happening again."
Yep.
So...
like his qualms, sort of, and how he never like got over what happened in World War II is mostly... there were hints of it. They were sort of touched upon, but it's mostly in this story. It's, contained. Mm-hmm. So I was surprised how well it worked. And Wilf is, I don't know, Wilf is pretty cool.
Wilf's one of my favorite characters. I was really bummed that we never see the 11th Doctor just go back and say hi to Wilf and tell him that he's okay. Like, I was really hoping when I watched this the first time that we were going to see it would have been fine if it was just like a 2-minute scene just where the 11th Doctor shows up and tells Wilf that he's okay. Well,
that would have been nice. There's also in this, like, the Doctor tells Wilf that he's only going to see him one more time, and then he goes and gives him the lottery ticket, and that's why Wolf. No. That's why Wilf starts really tearing up when he sees the Doctor leave, because he knows it's going to be the last time he sees the Doctor. Mm-hmm. But it would be nice to like revisit Wilf in some capacity. Maybe just have the Doctor like snooping on Wilf, stalking him or whatever, being like, "I can't reveal myself to you."
Great. Just watching from like across the street, like peeking through the blinds. But then when the Doctor finds out that it's the White Point Star, he basically starts crashing the Vinvachi ship into the planet because he's like, "All right, you guys just man the asteroid lasers and shoot down the missiles that the Master's going to be shooting at us because the Master controls the unit now as well."
Yeah, they have this Millennium Falcon moment where they man these like turrets.
There's a lot of Star Wars parallels in this.
This was really cool. I really liked this scene of them shooting down the missiles and stuff. And they're doing it over the ocean. It looks really awesome.
Yeah, they're flying really close to the ground, like zooming across the ocean. It looks like they zoom right past Bad Wolf Bay, but it's not. It's just the cliffs in England. And then the Doctor just jumps out of the spaceship and crashes through the roof of the mansion.
Yeah. And
survives,
he gets shards of glass stuck all over his body and starts regenerating. No.
I mean, this is, I think, part of the reason why he dies in this story is because he just falls like 60 feet out of a spaceship through a glass window.
Yeah.
Like, that alone probably should have killed him. And then the radiation on top of that, like, Tenth Doctor really takes a beating in this story.
There's also justification in this, like, 900 episodes in, or however much we are in, 800 or whatever, of, like, us counting on our death count the Doctor's regenerations as deaths, because when Wilf is sort of questioning, and this is when they're in the cafe in episode 1, Wilf is questioning him about, like, what regeneration is and what it entails, and he's like, well, I'll just regenerate into someone new, but it feels like dying.
Yeah, he says everything that was this body dies, and then a new person walks away from it.
Yeah, which is, again, the circle of life, man. Except just contained into this one, like, person.
There's a lot of thematic elements in the story about living and dying and knowing when it's your time to die.
And accepting it.
Accepting your death. And basically not trading other people's lives for your own.
Right, but also realizing that, like, death isn't really the end. I mean, that's always been a thing for, like, the Time Lords because they themselves regenerate. But, like, yeah.
And also just that everybody dies.
Yeah, we see actually the Time Lord writing, the Gallifreyan writing in this. I'm not sure if this is the first time we've seen it. But, like, look, there's a reason why it's circular, right?
I guess. Yeah. I mean, because time is a flat circle. Have you seen that? There's a guy who's like, time is a flat circle. Everything just repeats itself over and over again.
Well, I mean, that's not, like, who are you referring to?
I don't remember.
That's not, like, a singular idea, and that's not a new idea either. I mean,
no, but
the modernists believe in the spiral of, some of them at least believe in, like, the spiral of history. That's also in Invisible Man, Beware the Spiral of History.
Great.
But, like, that's also an idea that has existed in world literature for thousands and thousands of years, that time isn't, like, linear, it's a circle or a spiral.
Yeah. Doesn't really make sense in my opinion. But I don't think time is linear either, so
it really depends what language you speak, actually, because if you really, like, get into some of this stuff, and I've read, like, a little bit about it at least, like, Indo-European languages are one mostly based more, like, even more so than other languages, because this is also, like, a really human thing, but, like, more based on, like, sight and, like, point, like, also because of that, like, cause and effect, like, point A to point B, which is, like, really related to how linear time is often, like, represented in those languages compared to other languages.
I mean, from a strictly physical point of view, time is, like, really difficult to deal with because it's something that you just take for granted. And so you kind of just always assume that time is a quantity. If you just consider time strictly as a quantity, is always increasing. And then it's like, well, how do you define time from like a strictly physical point of view? And you know, the most accepted definition of time is the direction. Positive time is defined as the direction in which entropy is increasing in the universe. And to adequately explain that, you have to go into like an explanation of like what entropy is and how it increases. But basically, you define time to be this direction in which entropy is always increasing in the universe as a whole. But then, you know, there's always the question like, can we somehow decrease the entropy of the universe? And if we did that, would that mean that time would flow in a negative direction by that definition? Like, time is just really difficult to deal with, even if you just disregard language and you try to look at it like from a strictly mathematical or physical viewpoint. Time is like really weird.
Sure, and that's why there's so many different conceptions of it throughout human history.
Yeah. And that's also why like Einstein is considered like so smart, such a genius, because he basically looked at time in a way that people hadn't looked at it before, physicists hadn't looked at it before, and came up with these things that, time gets even more weirder when you start like traveling at the speed of light, because if you're traveling at the speed of light, then time doesn't pass for you. So that's another thing that's like
But like time,
difficult to explain.
I don't want to like diminish Einstein or anything, but like time itself has something to do with that. Like the ways he was thinking about things is also related to like when he was born and stuff, because like people before him like couldn't have even touched on these things, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about physics, is it's a cumulative science.
As almost
if Einstein
all of them
had been
are.
born 300 years earlier, it's unlikely
Would have just been killed.
I mean, it would have been unlikely that he would have come up with anything that he did.
Yeah, exactly.
But
And if he did, would have just been like probably just thrown under the bus for it.
yeah. But still, that's the thing, is like, he was the one who was like, time doesn't pass when you're traveling at the speed of light. And then it's like, well, then you have to define time like in a global frame and a local frame, and time just gets really weird.
Yeah. In this, at least, and because they show the Gallifreyan writing, they're like relating time in some way to like this circle of life thing that's in this story.
Mm-hmm.
And they also do that in terms of like literature too, honestly, when the Ood is like, the story never ends.
Yeah, and there's that other circle of life thing too,
Never-ending story.
when the lady's like, we're just resurrecting these Time Lords who then just find new ways to die. Like, we just keep putting them through this whole circle. We resurrect them, then they die, and then we resurrect them, and they die, right? And that's why she was like, well, maybe this war needs to end, because like this isn't natural, this isn't like okay, and we're just killing a bunch of people over and over and over again.
Yeah. Anyway, what were we actually talking about?
The Doctor crashes through the skylight
window.
And he pulls because he took the gun from Wilf when he found out there was a white point star, and he turns it on the Master, and the Master's like, ha ha ha, you're not going to kill me. And then he turns it on Rassilon, who's coming through the gate.
The Time Lords are in the room. And the woman is there too. She's in the background.
And Rassilon's like, choose your enemy wisely, because there's many of us and only one Master. And the Doctor turns it back to the Master. The Master's like, Wilf runs in, and everybody like escapes because the Master's like, I'm just gonna impose myself on the Time Lords, and then when I have even more Masters, and then Rassilon just kind of moves his gauntlet up and undoes all the Master's work, and the Master's like, damn it.
So everyone runs out, and there's a guy trapped in the enclosed space.
Yeah.
And Wilf goes in and frees him.
Yeah, because Wilf's a hero.
Yeah, because Wilf is awesome.
But the instant you see this, you're like...
The guy's not thankful for it at all. He just runs away.
The instant you see this happen, you're like...
Oh, so the instant you see it happen, I was like, oh, so what I thought before was right. The Doctor's going to have to free Wilf from inside this machine. But, like, also, there's something in this scene, I know, because we talked about it before recording, you noticed it too, is that whenever the Doctor turns around with the gun in his hand, there's, like, this loud, metallic gun cocking sound.
Yeah.
And, like, this is something that...
This guy has a revolver, we should mention, by the way.
This is something that a lot of TV shows and movies do. And I don't know why this is such a trend, but, like, whenever someone's holding a gun, like, just the slightest movement with someone holding a gun makes this, like, gun cocking sound.
You sneeze from the other side of the room, and the guy's like...
And here it's very exaggerated.
I mean, like, in an action movie, it's like...
It's like a good signal to when someone, like, picks up a gun or is about to use a gun.
Mm-hmm. In an action movie, it's like it's like an adrenaline thing, right? And it's like, get ready, here we go. Yeah. Like, this is what's going to happen.
I don't even have a problem with it. It was just, like, way more exaggerated than I've ever seen.
Distracting in the scene, in my opinion, because it was all I could think about every time the Doctor turned around. I was like, what is he doing with that gun that it's making that noise? He eventually decides to shoot the machine that's causing the link with the gate, because then Gallifrey appears in the sky, because the Master thinks it's just the Time Lords coming back, and the Doctor's like, the prophecy was it's returning, not them, not they're returning. Yeah. And the Master's like, what? And then Rassilon's like, Gallifrey returns, and then you just see Gallifrey materialize in the sky above Earth, and everyone starts panicking. Don't know why, since there was that time that like 26 planets materialized in the sky. So this isn't
nothing.
This isn't a new thing for Earth. They just seem to have a thing where planets materialize in the sky for no reason. And
this is actually the scene where I think there's a Russell T cameo, because they focus on like this one guy in particular for a couple seconds, and it kind of looks like Russell T. Again, probably something I should have looked up, but hey, I didn't.
I didn't notice it too much. The Doctor blows up the machine, wouldn't
be surprised if it was him though.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. They made a fun farewell video where I think we'll watch it for next week for the retrospective.
Sure.
Because I think it's a lot of fun, actually. Basically, where David Tennant and some of the other people, I think David Tennant was involved, but they like wrote this little song about how Russell T and Julie Gardner like brought Doctor Who back and rebooted it, because they're moving on after this. So they wrote this little song that basically tells the story of them bringing Doctor Who back.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then they also did, I guess, during the filming of this, they filmed this fun music video to the Proclaimers' 500 Miles. That's the one where I'm going to walk 500 miles. And
yeah.
This is David Tennant's favorite song, and they basically all like lip synced along, and they basically got the entire crew, and they're all singing along.
Wow, it's his favorite song.
It's a lot of fun, I think. Also, so I think
you just fell a few notches in my doctor ranking. Just kidding.
It's one of his favorite songs. I don't want to say it's his definitive favorite song, but it's one of his favorite songs.
Yeah.
And they filmed a little fun music video for that during the rap party. So I think we'll watch that too, because I think it's a lot of fun. But I just wanted to bring that up because we were talking about the Russell T cameo. And
the supposed Russell T cameo.
The supposed Russell T cameo. Anyway, the Doctor blows up the machine. He tells the Master to step out of the way, and he blows up the machine. So the Time Lords start going back, and then the Master tells the Doctor to step out of the way because Rassilon's going to blast the Doctor with his gauntlet, his Infinity Gauntlet, and then
Master's like, no, only I can kill the Doctor.
So he starts zapping Rassilon, and then he gets sucked back to Gallifrey, back into the Time War as well. Forgot to mention the reason why they need this to get out of the Time Wars, because the Time War is time locked. So, but if there's something outside the time lock, they can use that to basically break through the time lock and escape.
Which they basically use the Master to do this, right?
Yeah.
They implant this thing into his head as a child to do this.
Yeah, and then the reason why they can come back now is because the Master turns everybody on Earth into the Master. So the drum beat is in all of their heads. So now the signal's been amplified like 6 billion times, 7 billion times.
Yep.
Over, and then with the physical link, they can use that to come back. And then, so the Doctor's like, yeah, damn, I survived. Really thought I was going to die there. And he's like lying on the ground, and then, when the Doctor's at his lowest moment, you just hear, and the Doctor's like, no, and it's just Wilf knocking on the door of the glass.
Yep. So the Doctor has this moment, I think this is one of David Tennant's best moments, where he's really upset, because he wants to live, and that's also like his last line is the 10th Doctor is like, man, I wish I was...
I don't want to go.
Yeah, I don't want to go. And he has this moment where he gets really upset because he's like, oh, Wilf is just an old man. I could do so much more in this form or whatever.
Yeah, this is another one of those Time Lord victorious moments when the Doctor like really flirts with becoming this despotic leader. I think last week I mentioned that alternate timeline in the comic. Yep. This is the moment where that actually happens. In that comic, the explanation is the Doctor leaves Wilf to die here, and that's when he becomes the Time Lord victorious completely.
Yeah.
Because when he gives this speech, he talks about how he could do so much more and how it's not fair because Wilf is just an old man who's lived his life, and the Doctor's still young in this body, relatively speaking. I think someone calculated that, like, the 10th Doctor is actually one of the shortest lived Doctors, like...
Yeah.
Like, time-wise, 9th Doctor too. And
Wilf is actually agreeing with him. He's like, yeah, you're right, Doctor, just leave me.
And the Doctor like says this,
even more, probably.
Yeah. And he says this really cruel thing like, it would have to be you, right? It would have to be you. But then at the end of the speech, the Doctor kind of like, I guess he has this moment of self-realization because he's like, I've lived too long.
Yep.
And then he goes into the chamber and Wilf's like, no, don't do it, Doctor. No, don't do it. And he's like, we've got to be quick about this. So he pushes the button and Wilf bolts out the door, and then he screams in agony as he gets blasted with radiation.
Yeah. But that doesn't kill him immediately, actually.
Yeah,
he stands up and Wilf is like, oh, you're fine then.
We have precedent for this. The 3rd Doctor gets blasted with radiation on the planet of the Spiders, and then remember, he spent like a bunch of time traveling the time vortex before he showed up with on Sarah Jane's doorstep at Unit and just falls out and dies.
I don't remember him getting blasted. I mean, I don't doubt you, but like, I don't remember that actually, him getting blasted.
He gets blasted with the Metabelus radiation because they're on Metabelus 3, remember? Because there's that whole thing with the blue crystals. Yeah,
I barely remember that story, to be honest.
So,
I mean, even if we didn't have any precedent for it, would have been fine.
Yeah. The Doctor then goes out with Wilf and basically tells Wilf he'll see him one more time before he dies, and then that'll be it. And this is 20 minutes before the end of the episode, by the way.
Yeah,
I checked the timestamp and I was like, wow, they really wrapped this up pretty early. And then I forgot about the greatest hits of Russell T. You could almost play like a really sad piano song over this whole thing and it would fit basically perfectly.
Could have played the song for 10 at some point during this. Maybe not in this scene, but at some point.
They have that really epic choir song that they play when the 10th Doctor dies.
Yeah.
They're saying Vale, which is Latin for goodbye.
Huh.
I think the song's named Vale Decum, which is goodbye 10.
Yeah. Subtle. Just kidding.
Subtle.
No, it doesn't need to be like subtle. I don't even know what subtlety is at this point, so.
The guy singing the song is the same guy who sang the song for 10. As far as I know.
Wow, that's also really interesting.
I think. He's the guy who sings it has appeared on the soundtrack before, but I'm not remembering what the other song he sang was. Anyway, the doctor basically tells Wilf he's going to get his reward now. He takes Wilf home. This is when there's a comment about Sylvia smiling.
Yeah.
Then obviously he's going to go get his reward. So I think
his death. I mean, that's...
First people he visits are
Mickey
and Martha.
So we
who
see...
revealed to have gotten married.
Yeah, we see Mickey and Martha getting shot at by a Sontaran.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they like come back and marry off these, because I mean,
how do you feel about these two characters specifically being married? I mean, I don't have a problem with Martha or Mickey being married because, like, whatever, they moved on with their lives, and
I guess
I don't know how I feel about these two characters specifically being married to each other.
Yeah, like I guess it's a good thing, but like at the same time, it feels like Martha's like, oh man, couldn't get with the doctor, so I guess there's Mickey, and Mickey's like, oh man, couldn't get with Rose, I guess there's Martha.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that.
I guess it's fine though.
But it's fine.
I mean, neither of us ever really liked characters getting married off in the classic show, except for maybe Susan.
Yeah.
But this doesn't necessarily feel all that similar to the classic show thing of like marry off the companion to get them out of the show.
No, it's just like they have clearly moved on since.
Yeah. I think like it's supposed to be like they've moved on, right? But it also leaves that taste in your mouth of like, well, they just took their second choices and whatever. It's fine though. The doctor shows up, whack-a-mole as a Sontaran with like a mallet. And they just see him from far off.
And then he saves Sarah Jane's son from getting run over by a car.
So this scene starts with just Sarah Jane's son on the phone. I think he's talking to Sarah Jane. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who this was. I didn't recognize
him at first either. I was like, who is this?
I didn't recognize him until he started being like, Mom. And then Sarah Jane shows up. I was like, oh, it's Sarah Jane's son. But like, he's such a minor character in Doctor Who itself. I'm sure he's bigger in Sarah Jane Adventures.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it is fine. The doctor saves him from getting hit by a car.
And Sarah Jane watches the doctor get into the TARDIS and he kind of gives her a half-hearted wave. And then we get the one that basically would be impossible for you to remember unless you were just really lucky like me, or you just had a really good memory. He goes, there's this lady named Verity Newman, which you didn't pick as obvious reference to Verity Lambert and Sidney Newman.
And this scene is also kind of meta too, where they're talking about like how the doctor influenced like this person's life, and because this is Joan's granddaughter. Yeah, from Family of Blood and Human Nature.
And the doctor gets a copy of the book that she wrote signed, and he's like, I'm the doctor. And she's like, that's funny. That was the name that John Smith used. And then he's like, was she happy in the end? And she's like, wow, it's you.
Yeah, I didn't get this one at all. I had to actually look this one up because I had no idea what was going on.
I picked up on this one. And then I think we get Jack and Alonzo.
Okay, we get Jack. He's sitting in this bar.
This bar is the greatest.
Full of all the aliens from the past 5 years.
There's a Slovene. There's a hat.
Yeah, there's a hat.
There's an adipose on the bar.
Yep.
I kind of liked this.
I was okay with it. At the same time, I wasn't okay with it.
The hat was like the bartender, I think, which I thought was humorous.
Yeah, I think there was a human bartender. There were, I think, multiple bartenders. One of them was humanoid, at least. The doctor shows up. He sends a note to Jack via the bartender, and it's just like his name's Alonzo.
Then he kind of just head nods towards this guy who sits down in the bar, and it's Alonzo from Voyage of the Damned.
The guy who takes over the role of the captain from Voyage of the Damned.
The real greatest hits of SLT. And you're like, man, would anyone even remember this guy?
I mean, I remembered him, but it is such like an obscure character to bring back, honestly.
I really think it was just like who's willing to come back just for like a cameo appearance?
Who's humanoid, who we can pair with Jack.
And who wants to say goodbye to the program in this like thing? Because this is the last time we see Jack on Doctor Who proper as well.
Oh, man.
I know a lot of people were really hoping Stephen Moffat was going to bring Jack back, and John Barrowman was like, I'm down to come back whenever they want. So,
damn it, Stephen.
Yeah, John Barrowman like loves the work he did on Doctor Who. He like loves the fandom. And he's like, I will come back and I will come back whenever, because he like loves the program.
Bring him back.
And
I'm sure he's still acting.
He is. He's been on Arrow. You know that?
Yeah, I know what Arrow is.
He has like a recurring role on Arrow.
Huh. Never watched it.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
And then we get...
I forget what's next, actually.
The Rose, I think.
Is it Rose or is it Donna first? I think Donna's first.
Donna's first, then Rose, right? Rose is the final one.
Donna gets married.
Yeah, the doctor goes to Donna's wedding, but he doesn't actually go to the wedding. She's like being her old mean Donna self, because she's like, this is a picture of just friends. Oh, and I don't know this lady's name. Neris. Neris. And Neris is like, wow.
She makes some jab also about like what Neris is wearing. I didn't really.
Oh yeah, because Neris is like, you made me wear peach, and she's like, yeah, you are a peach, soft on the outside with a hard core in the middle. It's like, Jesus, Donna. And then Sylvia sees the doctor, and she points him out to Wilf, and they go over, and the doctor basically says that he gives him an envelope
from Sylvia's dead husband.
Yeah, so the doctor basically says he went back in time and he borrowed a £1 note from Sylvia's husband.
And bought a winning lottery ticket with it.
Well, he doesn't tell them that he bought the lottery ticket.
Right, he doesn't tell them, or what's like, what you can assume is a winning lottery ticket, right? Like, they don't actually show they're just like, oh man, another, or they just, like, they don't win.
I think the doctor went into the future, got the lottery numbers, and came back.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Again, you can easily not believe that, though, because they don't explore it.
He's a good person, though. This is his reward. He's saying goodbye to all his companions.
Yeah, I mean, I think when he says, like, I'm going to get my reward, he's talking about his death, right? Because that's like a euphemism, I guess, for your death, like your reward.
I guess. I assumed it was going to be that he was referring to, like, him doing something for all his companions.
Yeah, it's probably both of those things.
And so then Wilf salutes the doctor, and he just kind of nods, and he leaves, and then Wilf is breaking down crying, and then he gives the envelope to Donna, and she opens it, like, wow, a lottery ticket, what a lame gift. And then Sylvia and Wilf kind of just look at each other and laugh, because they know what the doctor's done with this lottery ticket.
Yep.
And then the final one is, we see Rose talking with Jackie, and
this is Christmas Eve.
No, it's New Year's.
New Year's Day, 2005.
Yeah, that's like the final thing you see.
A few months before Rose meets the Ninth Doctor.
Because Jackie and Rose split off, and the Doctor's like leaning on a wall because he's dying, and then Rose is like, you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm all right. Happy New Year. And she's like, Happy New Year. And he's like, what year is it? And she's like, oh, it's 2005. It's like, you know what? I think you're going to have a great year. And she's like, wow, thanks. And then she leaves.
Let her go, Russell T.
Well, he's letting her go now. This is the last we ever get of Rose. So then the Doctor goes.
I mean, the show's not over yet.
Yeah, well, do we really want Rose to
come back? If there is like a bit, like if the new show gets canceled or ends or whatever, and there's like a big finale similar to this, they're probably, at least want to bring back Rose.
If a show gets canceled and they do a big finale, I can totally see them doing like a multi-Doctor story where they just get as many Doctor actors as they can back and do this really complex story with as many references as possible. It'll be like the 5 Doctors, but
good.
But good,
hopefully good. We'll have to see.
So then the Doctor.
I don't think the show ending is like on the horizon anytime soon.
No, I don't think so. I think at this point it's. I don't want to say too popular to get canceled because that's never true, but it's popular enough that I think its future is secure for at least a couple of years.
Yep.
Then an Ood shows up and is like, your song is ending, Doctor. Come. The universe will sing you to sleep. This is when he also says a line about the song ending, but the story continuing.
Yeah.
And he says, the universe will sing you to sleep. And the Doctor goes into the TARDIS. He's like, I don't want to go. They did 3 takes of this scene. They did one where the Doctor was really emotional when he said, I don't want to go. And it's really cheesy and hammy. And I'm really glad they didn't use that one. And then they did a take where he was even more subdued than he was, where he's just like, I don't want to go.
And then they Goldilocks it, got the best of both worlds, and here we are.
This is David Tennant's best delivered line of his entire run.
I don't think so. I do think his best delivered line is in this story. I think it's when he says, I could do so much more, or whatever that line is. Mm-hmm. I think that's basically his best delivered line on the show. And
then the 10th Doctor regenerates.
Because he sprays it instead of saying it. I don't know if you noticed that, but he like actually spits. Yeah. Yep.
And then the 10th Doctor dies. He regenerates. Really sad moment, in my opinion.
There's huge blasts of like fire coming off of him.
Yeah.
And the TARDIS gets partially destroyed. Part of the
obvious
room.
Explanation for this is they want to give Stephen Moffat a completely clean slate, which includes the TARDIS interior.
Right. I mean, I didn't know that was happening, but I could kind of guess, right? Mm-hmm. And then we see Matt Smith.
Yeah, these lines are actually written by Stephen Moffat. They're uncredited, but Matt Smith's lines are written by Stephen Moffat. Yeah. And he basically says some things about his new body. He's like, I'm a girl, because he's got long hair, but he's like, he feels his Adam's apple, and it's like, nope, never mind.
He's like, I'm ginger. Oh, I'm not ginger.
He's like, damn, I'm not ginger yet.
Does he say, damn, I'm not Ginger?
Yeah, he says, still not Ginger yet.
Oh. Gotta get one last Ginger joke in there. It's not really a Ginger joke.
I think when the Doctor regenerates into the 12th Doctor, he makes a jab about how he's still not Ginger again.
But he could have been, because Peter Capaldi has gray hair, so, like, could have been Ginger.
But I think Peter Capaldi
I'm pretty sure he wasn't, like, actually Ginger, like the actual actor himself.
Yeah, I think he had brown hair when he...
Right. But,
I
like...
think he was a brunette. Yeah, then he's like, oh, I'm crashing, Geronimo, and then that's how it ends.
Yeah, and, like, even just from this scene, like, you can kind of get a feel for how the 11th Doctor is going to be different from the 10th Doctor. For one, he's a lot slower. David Tennant, and I think we're used to it at this point, so we haven't really, like, ever touched on this, but David Tennant is, like, a fast actor and a fast talker. Mm-hmm. And Matt Smith is much slower than he is.
Slower, but I don't think as slow as the 9th Doctor was.
I'll have to see. I mean, I've only seen this one sort of little scene with him.
That's something we'll talk about in 2 weeks.
Like, I'm talking about in terms of, like, his line delivery and stuff like that. He's a lot more, like, maybe methodical. And
yeah, I'm actually surprised to hear you say that because I think he actually speeds up. I think by the end of his run, he's quicker than David Tennant.
I don't know, did you like how they put the 11th Doctor at the end of this, or do you think it should have just ended with, cutting it off with the 10th?
No, I think they should put the 11th Doctor at the end of this. I think it's better that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as like a tease for what's coming up.
Because we had the same thing with the 10th Doctor. When the 9th Doctor dies, the 10th Doctor shows up. He's like, he licks his teeth, and then he goes, new voice. And then he goes, oh, where were we? Barcelona. And then it ends. And this one, it's TARDIS is crashing, and then we get the 11th Doctor, and he's like, Geronimo.
Right. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. Honestly, I think it's nice when we get the next Doctor at the end of the story. They get like a little introduction scene like that. I think it's nice out of universe because it gives us like a lead into what's coming up. But I think in universe is nice because I think it provides like a good capstone to the story. Like,
sure,
it's like there's like a finality to it. Like the Doctor's actually gone. This is the next guy.
Yeah, that's actually a good point because there's been, especially if you watch the classic show, there's like, oh, the Doctor is going to die, and then somehow he gets out of it. Obviously, this is a regeneration, so it's a little different. Right. But at the same time, there might always like be that thought in the back of your mind, like, well, we didn't see him regenerate, so we don't really know yet.
I think especially so with the 10th Doctor because in Stolen Earth Journey's End, he regenerates and he regenerates into himself. So I think, even more so than other regenerations, they needed to have that scene at the end of this to say, yep, the 10th Doctor's done. This is the new era, basically.
Sure.
So we're going to be talking about the 10th Doctor next week, as we usually do, because we split the retrospectives from the final stories a long time ago. Just for time's sake, we're already like an hour and a half into this episode, and we could sit here and talk with 10th Doctor like another hour and a half.
Yeah, probably. We'll also be doing a couple more things, like we mentioned. We're going to be watching that farewell video, I think.
We'll watch the 2 farewell videos because they're only like 2 or 3 minutes, and I think they're pretty fun.
Right.
We also decided, we haven't mentioned it on the show yet, but we decided we typically also do some sort of like expanded universe thing for the retrospectives. If we did Spiral Scratch for the 6th Doctor, for the 9th Doctor, we did the 2005 Doctor Who annual.
Right.
So we're thinking for this, we're going to listen to the 10th Doctor and Donna audio.
Queen of the, I'm forgetting what it's called actually. Queen of the Dead, something like that.
Death and the Queen,
which is supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, it was written by James Goss. It's the third in the kind of the set of 3 Dr. Donna audios that they released. So we're going to be listening to that for next week, and we'll talk about that next week, and we'll do the retrospective next week.
Right.
But if we have other things to say about the story, we'll say it now. And also, we usually do like a season retrospective, so I think we'll do that now as well.
Sure, although this isn't really like...
It wasn't really a season.
But we can do like a Doctor Who in 2009 retrospective.
Yeah, like the specials.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to bring up a list, actually. So we had, just as a reminder, we had The Next Doctor, which was the Christmas special for 2008. And then we had Planet of the Dead, which was Easter 2009. And then Waters of Mars, which was kind of like November 2009. And then we had
this, which is Christmas and New Year.
Christmas 2009 and New Year 2010. And then I think this is when Doctor Who officially moves into the fall time slot. I think the 2010 season 5, series 5 airs in the fall, I think.
I wouldn't know, although there's like that 2-part season coming up in like a couple years where they like split up the season.
Series 7 they split over 2 years, and I know a lot of people were really upset about that because viewership actually dropped like pretty dramatically because of that.
That's kind of a dumb reason to like not watch the show though. I'll have to see how they do it. Maybe there is some like kick in the teeth to like the fans in that season or whatever. Well, I mean, I'll have to see.
You'll see.
But yeah, I mean, I thought this sort of specials run worked really well.
Yeah, I think it was a good way to end off.
Planet of the Dead was definitely pretty weak in comparison to the other ones, at least.
I definitely think Planet of the Dead is the weakest of the specials. Waters of Mars is definitely my favorite of the specials.
I would say this, End of Time Part 2.
That's fair. I just really like Waters of Mars just as a story. I like that it beat the Doctor down and he took him to this point of almost no return and then brought him back.
Yeah.
At the end, you know, I'm going to talk about this when we actually start Series 5, but there was a little bit of uncertainty about whether or not David Tennant was going to stay when Stephen Moffat took over. And I know Stephen Moffat, you know, the uncertainty lasted long enough that Stephen Moffat had come up with a plan for how Series 5 would have worked if David Tennant had stayed on. And I'm going to talk about it when we start Series 5 because it's mainly focused around the first episode, but I think it wasn't until a little bit after the Next Doctor, or a little before the Next Doctor actually, because it was the whole thing, it's the Next Doctor, that David Tennant announced that he was going to be leaving the role with Russell T. So I just thought that was kind of interesting to mention that that Stephen Moffat at least had come up with his plan for how he would do Series 5 if David Tennant had stayed on as the 10th Doctor.
Yeah, it's interesting. Something we can talk more about when we get there in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. And I think this, Russell T tried to have a little bit of an overarching plotline with these specials, especially the ones that were in 2009, because he introduced that kind of prophecy in Planet of the Dead, and then we see it come back in Waters of Mars. The Doctor mentions it when he goes back to save the people, and then it ends here. And there's also that through thread of the Doctor traveling alone and why he needs a companion. You know, he gets really dark in Waters of Mars. He gets almost to that point where he's going to become a Time Lord victorious. He's going to just start ruling over the galaxy. He's going to become this really evil character, but his morals, I guess, win out in the end, and he brings it back, and then he almost gets there again in the end of time.
Right.
Which is something that actually I think they started way at the beginning of the 10th Doctor's run, but we'll save that for next week.
I mean, they started a lot of this at the beginning of Russell T's run, right? Even in Rose, where like the Doctor needs like someone to be there so he doesn't like go overboard in multiple senses, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of we get more about the Time War in this than we've ever gotten before.
Right. And this is because this is sort of like Russell T's, something he brings to the show, right? The Time War. Makes sense that he would sort of do a sort of, like his big finale would involve the Time War.
Yeah. So
I'm guessing they don't drop the Time War. I'm pretty sure that's like something that keeps coming up.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the few things that Stephen Moffat continues to reference from the Russell T era.
Probably a good thing. They don't just drop it.
Yeah, especially since in the Russell T era specifically, it's been like a really big character defining moment for the Doctor, and it's been this through thread through his whole kind of 2 incarnations that Russell T oversaw.
Right.
So
I like later Russell T episodes actually, I guess they get, I don't know if I really want to say this, but they get like more literary almost. They start touching on like more literary concepts. Like we had, what was it called? The one, Silence in the Library, I think.
Yeah.
Then we have this one also, which at least somewhat touches on stuff like that. The story never ends line from the Ood, and how that connects to like the rest of this story as well. Right. Which was interesting. And again, we didn't like even dive too much into that in this episode of ours, but that's okay. I had more to say about it, but I don't want to get into it at this point because this episode is long enough as it is. But yeah, I think you can definitely, what I really want to say by mentioning all of this is like you can trace like Russell T's writing over these 5 years.
Yeah, through his stories.
Yeah, through his stories, see what he's interested in at different times. I think more so than like really any other writer for the show, honestly. Like you can see like a development almost.
Yeah, well, I think
maybe that's just because of the amount that he wrote compared to other writers.
And also just I think how TV changed between the classic show and the reboot. But I mean, even just for reboot writers, I really don't think there's enough of their material to see.
Really, there's not enough Stephen Moffat?
I'm talking about where we are in the show right now.
Yeah, true.
But like I said with Stephen Moffat, once I started watching his stories again, I noticed that he actually seems to be pretty consistent with this whole thing. He likes to like invert reality and the what's not reality in his stories, and he likes to do that a lot because he did it in Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead. He kind of did it before in Blink, and it's something he's going to do a lot more in his run. And he did The Girl in the Fireplace, where you think one of the, she's just dreaming the monster's under a bed, but then it's a spaceship. So it's something that Stephen Moffat really touches on. But I think in terms of Russell T, yeah, I think you can look at all his stories and you can see that there's definitely some sort of trend over the course of his stories. Whether or not that was like him actually changing his beliefs or him actually getting to the point where he was starting to run out of ideas by the end. Because, this story is really the greatest hits of Russell T, and whether or not that's, we said that's because, the show's ending, but it could also be because maybe he's just out of ideas and he just wants to put all of everything he's done into the story so that he can give us a grand finale, so to speak.
Which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah. I think it works as the end to the Russell T era. It is drastically different to how Stephen Moffat ends his era, so I'm going to be really curious to when we get there to see how we can compare and contrast the two, in my opinion.
Sure.
But I don't know.
Like I've been saying for a while now, I'm ready for a change.
Which is interesting. I think on this show, what's interesting is that somehow we always get right to that point where we're ready for a change, and then the change happens.
And then we're like, oh, I don't want to die like the 10th Doctor.
It's just interesting because I think one of the good things that Doctor Who's done is that it always knows when it's time for a change and doesn't try to drag anything out longer than it really needs to do.
Yeah, Tom Baker. I don't know. But okay, look, I mean, that was just a joke. Even then, like, there's definitely many eras within the Tom Baker era.
Like, even though Tom Baker doesn't leave, they knew that if they're going to keep him on, they needed to change up a lot of things. Like, when J&T came in, his season was completely different from the previous 6 seasons of Tom Baker, right? And the Hinchcliffe Holmes era was completely different from the Douglas Adams era. So.
Yep.
Like I said, that's one of the things the show's done really well, in my opinion, is that whenever it feels like there's time for a change, it changes. I mean, even with the 9th Doctor, he only had 1 season, but by the end of it, you started to wonder where they were going to be able to take him as a character.
It works. It's a 50-plus-year-old show, so 55 almost.
Almost, yeah, 55. Now, in this podcast, 55th anniversary would be this year.
Yep.
Interesting. It's actually really interesting. Well, I don't have much more to say about this. There's a lot I want to say about the 10th Doctor. I'm going to save it for next week.
Right. I'm pretty much done as well. I will say, just in terms of how much enjoyment I got out of the story, Part 2 was a lot stronger than Part 1.
I agree with that. Part 2 is definitely a lot stronger than Part 1. Even though I feel like Part 2 in some places meandered a little bit more than Part 1.
I think it had to be a 2-parter, though.
I agree. I think there was, even though the story was simplistic, I think there was just too much to put into one part in the story.
Yep.
It's this really big, like I said, grand finale, so to speak. So, anyway, if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the 10th Doctor. If there's anything you want to say before we get to our retrospective next week, be sure to let us know. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And like we mentioned, next week we'll be doing the 10th Doctor retrospective. But until then, the end.